Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures. It's Friday once more, which means we bring to you yet another obscurity in literature. And today's book comes to us from a series of books from Bitmap Books, mostly, not all, but mostly having to do with the history of video games, and specifically mostly console video games. And of this series of books, I feel that this is one of the most obscure, at least here in the US, and that is the Sega Master System. And this is Bitmap Books Visual Compendium. So if you're not familiar with these are some nice quality books. Number one, it's big and fat and full of pictures. That's always a plus. It's also in a nice, handy dandy, thick slipcase cover. It's a little bit smaller than the average book. It's probably like a 6x7, 6x8. It's kind of funky size. And what's sad is I could probably identify most of the icons here in their alphabetical visual pictorial letter setup here. The first one, obviously, that comes to my mind was Q for Quartet, and the P in Phantasy Star, and Fantasy Zone, and Golden Axe, and Buster Brothers, and Columns, and Dr. Robotnik, and I don't know what the E is from exactly, but I always want to say E-SWAT, Psycho Tiger, Sonic. I'm not sure why the... Hang on. I don't know what the J is for. Kung Fu Boy. I don't know. Anyway, so these are really nice books, as I was saying. A for Alex Kidd. You've got some nice double ribbon bookmarks in there. Binding is pretty solid. You can lay this book nice and flat. One of the nice things, though, is interspersed throughout its 300, 400 plus pages is interviews with all sorts of people that actually worked on these systems, game designers. There's tons of people that were working in the video game industry, be it in the periodicals field, both in the US and overseas, getting a good look at the history of the system. A lot of these I have not played, and I think that's one of the fun things. Like the whole technical aspect. Oh, I remember seeing those kinds of explanations. One of the neat things about this book, though, is they've got these huge multi-page spreads. And I remember, I don't even know what magazine it was. I used to have as a kid a magazine that had all the level layouts of Alex Kidd in Miracle World. And I loved flipping through that thing. I loved it. I think I got it like on a trip in 6th grade. But yeah, funny thing, I never owned a Master System. And literally outside of 2 people I knew, nobody I had in my immediate circle ever had one. Or a Genesis, for that matter. I always dug the Sega stuff. And funny thing is, we were all hardcore fans of the Sega arcade games at the time. We absolutely loved games like Shinobi. It was one of our favorites. Hang On, obviously, Chopper Blade, Fantasy Zone. We played the crap out of those games. But we never owned any of the home consoles until Dreamcast rolled around. And that was like, oh man. Space Harrier. Obviously, a lot of people are more familiar with the Mega Drive Genesis version. My friend who did have a Master System did have a copy, I think. I cannot even remember anymore. It's been quite a few years. But I remember the first time I ever played this, and I was freaked out having to play it and sit on the giant motorcycle bike that was attached to the system. I thought that was pretty crazy. Snail Maze, I remember this was part of the system. The later versions had Hang On installed. So it's kind of cool. As every page you flip through, you got a blurb about the game, going over it as well. A nice touch. Alex Kidd BMX Trial. I remember hearing about it, never played it. Afterburner. There's when we played a lot. Like, you could spend some serious time going through this book. It's like every time. One of my favorites. Shock of Shocks, right? If you're not familiar, this is the all-time classic Phantasy Star. This game blew my mind the first time I saw it, and I was shocked to find out later on that, you know, one of the tricks to having... This was, like, I think, One of the first RPGs that I can really remember that blended the fantasy and sci-fi all together before Final Fantasy was really doing it and going forward with their tech levels. But it also was the first that I can recall really having big animated monsters that you fought. I know Dragon Quest didn't at that time back on the Nintendo system or the original Final Fantasies, but this certainly did. It was pretty dang cool. Was it the worms on Moatube? I always... It's been a long time since I played the original. I mean, looking back, it's quite archaic, but at the time, it was like, wow. I want to say there were some 3D glasses included with this. I don't know where I put them. You have a little icon there as you flip through. I never got into the 3D fad. Never did much for me. Played a ton of Outrun growing up. Penguin Land. Oh, yeah. Quartet. Oh, man. Now, this was a cool game. I loved playing Quartet. I think, to me, I remember, if I recall correctly, that you could have the whole 4-player setup in the arcade, but you couldn't do that on the Master System version. Played pretty good still. Rocky looking way better than it deserves to here. That's some nice sprite work. But that's the thing. I always felt that the Sega games had a lot nicer visual quality. At least in my opinion. Zaxxon 3D. Oh, Zaxxon. You were another one we played a ton of growing up. Gangster 10. Now Zillion. I'm familiar with Zillion. Never had a chance to play it, but again, we have these big, expansive 4-page maps. It's a very Metal Gear-ish type game. And that's kind of what's cool. I loved the thing about the Master System was, you know, Sega was already doing their own thing. And sometimes it was similar to what was going on with Nintendo or with NEC on the TurboGrafx once that hit the scene. Miracle Warriors. Wow, it's been a while. But Sega just kind of did their own thing, and I always appreciated that. Arcade conversions. If ever I could just tell from the artwork, it's supposed to be Altered Beast. Golden Axe. Many afternoons spent playing that. That one I think we did have, my friend had on his system. Cyborg Hunter based on a short-lived anime TV series. Any takers? Anybody know? I don't know. Doesn't look familiar. My first thought is Sonic Soldier Boardman, but I don't know. I'm curious. I'm going to have to go research this. Oh, Double Dragon. I can hear the music already just looking at the picture. Golvelius. This one was pretty cool. Sadly, there's one thing this book is majorly lacking, and that is one of my all-time favorite games. Spellcaster, which is basically Kujaku and the Peacock King, or Mystic Defender as it was later known, Galaxy Force. I remember playing that. I love they have a section here on just the artwork, so, not the artwork, the box work, and straight up system porn if you're into the tech aspect of things. Some of this stuff, I remember I had a Game Gear. I actually did have a Game Gear, and played that profusely. Loved Columns. Donna always reminded me of Legendary Axe on the TurboGrafx PC Engine, whatever you want to call it. That's a game I like too. I loved Gain Ground. I thought this was a very unique game, especially in the arcade where you could have all 3 players playing it. It was kind of weird in that you moved super duper slow, and there were not even hidden, but there were characters that you could recruit as you would go through each level, and there's like 20 or 30 of them in there. Very interesting, very different game, and so like as your roster of characters expands, you know, there's different ways to accomplish each level, and it gets pretty funky and hard. It's one of those games that save states make things so much easier for. I was not aware that there was a Shadow Dancer release on the Master System, but then again, a lot of the early, or not even early, major Mega Drive games seem to have been released on that. I did not know Ultima 4. It seemed to be on every other system, though. Forgotten Worlds, one of my favorite Capcom games of its era. Didn't know it had a Master System release. Asterix. Golden Axe Warrior. I believe this is also a version that became Axe Battler on the Game Gear. A Legend of Zelda-ish clone. Psychic World. Oh, dang. I loved this game, too. This was on the Game Gear. Beat that multiple times. Good old Strider. Of course, again, most people remember the Mega Drive version. Good old Mickey Mouse games. Again, more of a PC Engine, not PC Engine, Mega Drive thing. We get into some of the box art. Now, what's interesting is there's a book of nothing but, I know Bitmap put out a book of nothing but old Super Famicom box art, which is really cool. That's one that's on my short list of things I need to get a hold of. Altered Beast, absolutely loved. Played it upon to completion on many, many occasions. Oh, I loved. Cyber Shinobi, which was a European-only release. Spent many years digging around through these gold boxes out in Akihabara. And what's funny is, doesn't matter what country, what decade, people always thought, oh, the Japanese box art is so much better. No, it is not. That is the original artwork for Ken Seiden, and it is just as atrocious as anything that was showing up in the U.S. at that time. 1988. That was a while ago. Phantasy Star always looked cool. And then, as I was saying, one of the most egregious missing things, and again, my all-time favorite Master System games. Not Sonic, not Rainbow Islands, not Renegade, who's about to show up right there. Is we see it when we dig into there's a section in the back here all about Brazil and tech toys and how they continued the system for many, many years after it went defunct everywhere else. That missing game is the Wonder Boy series. My all-time favorite game on the Sega systems, on the TurboGrafx, Dragon's Curse, Wonder Boy, Monsterland. I cannot tell you how many times I've played that, replayed that, beat them, upgraded versions, original versions, everywhere. I even think, if I recall correctly, one of those, Monsterland, might have been an arcade game. But then they reskinned the entire thing into a famous comic from Brazil. But that is absolutely Wonder Boy Monsterland. No, Dragon's Curse. That's Monsterland. It's got to be. Dragon's Curse, you can see he's probably in tiger mode. Whichever character that is in the comic book, I have no idea, but he is absolutely with the sword and the shield. He's going to do those big swings. Totally. But yeah, fun stuff. Definitely a fun trip down memory lane for me. Growing up, spent a lot of time playing this stuff at my friend's house. It was always one of those things that we would come to each other's houses to play often because one of us had one system while the other had a different one. He had the Sega, I had the Nintendo. Both of us ended up with the NEC TurboGrafx 16, which I got to double check if Bitmap put a book out on that because that is one of my favorite systems. Still have it, still play it every now and then. Games like Blazing Lasers, Psychosis, all those Capcom ports, Sidearms, good times. But yeah, love me some retro video games. I'll put a link down below to Bitmap Books website. You want to take a look. This stuff seems to drift in and out of circulation on Amazon here in the States. I can't speak to other countries, but you know what? Maybe you'll get lucky and you'll get some of these for a good price. With that said, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.